Good feels. So let's continue to do some fact or feeling. Again, now that everything's settled down, all right, we're a little bit more logical. We're going to break down some of the results we saw over the weekend, and we'll figure out how much of our feeling now, how much of our takes now are based in fact or feeling NFL style. So let's start with that. As long as Stafford stays healthy, the Rams are the NFC's dark horse. Fact or feeling, Caroline?
So let's talk about verbiage here. The NFC's contender, for sure, totally, 100%. Like, why not? They've invested into the ground game. They've got a great defense. They have a veteran quarterback who the head coach trusts. You have a head coach who has a brilliant offensive mind. Now, as long as Matthew Stafford can stay healthy, and I think that this record is a testament not just to longevity, but availability. I mean, you don't start 17 straight games whenever you're unavailable. So as long as Matthew Stafford is able to stay healthy and stay on the field, then yeah, sure, why not? He can make any throw. That's all of the pieces of playoff, if not championship DNA.
So I agree with you because look, it's feeling for me that this would make the Rams a dark horse simply because I don't believe that they've ever been a dark horse, right? Like if you asked me a month ago who my Super Bowl teams are from the NFC, my Super Bowl candidates, like top tier, it's the Eagles, it's the Rams, it's maybe the Lions, it's Tampa Bay, maybe the Vikings, like some of those groups of teams. I don't know that there's really a team out of nowhere. Like when I think dark horse, I think never would have expected that team to end up in the Super Bowl. And if I'm looking at the NFC side of it, I mean, Washington, there are plenty of people that think that Washington's already a Super Bowl caliber football team. If the 49ers get healthy and go to the Super Bowl, would anybody ever actually be shocked? Like, I can't think necessarily of a dark horse NFC candidate other than maybe the Cowboys. Like, would the Cowboys be the closest thing we have to a dark horse Super Bowl? And are we really to put them into that conversation? Look, the Cowboys look better than I thought they would look week one, but I'm a Super Bowl? Like, come on. I don't know that the NFC this year really has a dark horse candidate.
The Cowboys as a dark horse? Like those two words, Cowboys and dark horse, in the same sentence, like feel icky. But I don't think you're wrong. Because what have we been talking about the Cowboys all off season long? They're dysfunctional. They're without Micah Parsons. What are they? What in the world is Jerry Jones doing? Like, it's been nothing but negative talk about the Cowboys for the last several months. So if they do find themselves in the playoffs, then yeah, like maybe they are a dark horse. But like that feels icky, doesn't it?
I mean,
feels icky to call them a dark horse. Like, feels like the dark horse should be like the Falcons. Like that's a dark horse type of team. We're not talking about the Falcons. Nobody thinks the Falcons are going to do anything.
I guess it's because I can't stack a yellow brick road that gets the Falcons to the Super Bowl. I'm not sure I can for the Cowboys either, if I'm being honest. But there is some element for me of like, look at what we saw over the weekend, right? Like if we're being just cynical for a second, well, the Lions look like trash. The Vikings, I think, still have question marks at their quarterback position. The Tampa Bay struggled for the better part of that game. San Francisco's hurt at this point. Like, so other than the Packers and the Eagles, so I think the Packers and the Eagles came out and said, up yours, we are clearly Super Bowl teams. Outside of that, I think there's a pretty good question for most of the rest of the NFC. So it's interesting because that either means we're more likely to stack a dark horse or I'm not sure after week 1 week of evidence, I'm not sure it isn't clear that there are basically 2 Super Bowl teams in the NFC and everybody else is just climbing over themselves to be also Rams.
The NFC feels a little funky because if you would have asked me a week ago, about the NFC North, for example, I would have said, sure, there's a case for all 4 teams in the NFC North to be potential playoff teams. At least 3 if we're going to talk about the Lions and the Packers and the Vikings. I don't feel great about the Lions. I don't feel great about the Vikings. The only team I feel great about in the NFC right now is the Packers. Like even the Eagles at times. And look, the Eagles are going to make the playoffs. The Eagles very well could have the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. But there were times in that first game that I didn't think they looked great. They didn't play with a championship edge. You spit on Dak Prescott before the ball even kicks off. Like, it doesn't give you a lot of optimism. So it's the Packers. It's the Eagles. And then outside of that, like even in the NFC West, I would have said, okay, like let's talk about the 49ers and the Rams. Like they're definitely both playoff contenders. At this point, I don't know. If the 49ers can't stay healthy, they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah, 1,000%. There's more questions than
Feels
answers
boomer
in the
bust
NFC
in the
today.
NFC.
It does.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go factor feeling on an AFC opportunity here. The flip side of that game. Factor feeling. CJ Stroud overrated.
That's such a feeling. Like, come on, people. Like, this rookie year CJ Stroud that we saw is still in there somewhere. And I think we conveniently forget how many injuries the Texans suffered last year that very well explained why they took a step back. And also, in order for a player to be overrated, they have to be talked about a lot. We're not talking about CJ Stroud. We're not talking about the Texans. Once the Texans took a step back after, we were in the divisional round of the playoffs and after, CJ Stroud was offensive rookie of the year, once they took a little bit of a step back last season, we all just collectively as a football society forgot about the Texans. Oh, well, okay, move on from them. They're bad, so move on. So I don't think that he can be overrated because we're not talking about them very much.
Yeah, the hard part on that is that when you're being talked about like you're one of the best, man, I don't know. Like it's hard because overrated seems. I think he's an elite quarterback, but he was talked about like he had the chance to be in that same tier as Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. We haven't seen that yet, so a little bit of both on that, little fact and feeling. Okay, what about some wide receiver factor feeling? I'll give you this one. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best Ohio State running or wide receiver in the NFL. Fact or feeling?
I think it's feeling. Oh, and is that because Marvin Harrison Jr. plays for the Cardinals? Like, if Marvin Harrison Jr. was playing in a more and a better team that got more publicity, like maybe we would feel differently. Like maybe that this is just kind of bias from who he plays for. But based off of one game, and I know it's one game, but it's all we have. Like maybe Emeka Egbuka would like to have a word. Who knows? I have fallen in love with Emeka Egbuka, and then what he did week one just kind of cemented that. So I'm gonna go feeling, but that's very good company to be in.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, this is definitely feeling like. Look, it's such a. There's so many expectations on Marvin Harrison Jr. and I want to be cautious because I feel like a year ago we weren't cautious. And when you come into the league the way he came into the league, there is no doubt that it leads to some level of expectation. But when you start talking about, you see there some of the numbers that some of these guys put up, and you think about where they are, like Garrett Wilson. I mean, what Garrett Wilson has done over the course of the last few years, and there's a reason he got paid, right? Like there is a absolute reason why at some point some of these guys have become superstars. I think that there's an opportunity for Marvin Harrison Jr. to become a superstar. My question is, are we going to actually let that opportunity arise? Like without, it feels like we're trying to anoint Marvin Harrison Jr. before he even gets there. I just want to see some level of him become that guy before we talk about him like he's in that category. So a little bit of a feeling for me on that one. Let's get one more in.
Yeah.
Fact or feeling, Bryce Young has become irrelevant. We talk all the time about Cam Young being the most forgotten first overall pick in history. Bryce Young over here in Carolina struggling. Has he become irrelevant at this point?
I hate that word because it feels so cold and harsh and definitive, but it's true. Yeah, that's fact. Bryce Young has become irrelevant. The NFL is a what have you done for me lately league, and what the Panthers have done and what Bryce Young has done. I know that he showed some promise at the end of last season, but what the Panthers have done and what Bryce Young has done lately, nothing. They've done nothing. The Bryce Young had a brutal day in week one. Nobody's talking about it because nobody cares. Because everybody expects Bryce Young to have a brutal day. I think if Bryce Young really had a solid day, that would be more of a topic of conversation because it would be unexpected enough to be worth talking about. So yeah, I have to say, like, I understand the Panthers and Carolina. It's an organization that, it's not a massive market. It's not a team that gets talked about a whole lot. So that kind of adds on to it, adds another layer to it. But it's really, Bryce Young hasn't done anything to be worth talking about. So therefore, yeah, he is irrelevant.
Yes, that is fact. I think the organization being irrelevant in the minds of many is a bigger part of this conversation, though, because in my mind, when you draft somebody first overall, that is the player. That is the person that is going to lift you up into the national conversation. It changes the way your entire program is perceived. It changes the way everybody thinks about your brand. All of these things can happen when you select quarterback in the first round, and that quarterback has a chance to become one of the faces of the league. When it doesn't work out that way, the organization sucks the platform down. And I
Mhm.
genuinely believe that if Bryce Young had come in and had absolutely been a superstar, if Bryce Young comes in and has the sort of career that Jaden Daniels is having, for example, all of a sudden we're talking about Bryce every day. We're also talking about Carolina every day. He lifts an organization up. When you are drafted first overall and it looks in season 3 like maybe you're just not that guy, well, now you're just forgotten. And you're forgotten in part because of who you play for. If you play for a team in New York and you stink, then you're on everybody's mind, and that's equally difficult. But if you play for a
Yeah.
team that's particularly as a brand irrelevant and you don't lift that brand up, the brand then tears you down. So it's a combination of the Panthers being irrelevant with Bryce Young playing the way he's played that has made the entire conversation irrelevant. And at this point, I think people are going to forget that he was a first overall. He's going to become oh, yeah, they did draft a quarterback first overall. That's the unfortunate consequence of being drafted by a franchise that just doesn't necessarily get eyeballs and heartache the same way that other franchises do.